Take time.
Take your time.
At least 4 more hours.
Yeah, yeah.
Not right now.
3 more hours. 3 more hours. 2.5 more
Maybe
hours.
good 2.5 would be fine. We can do that. So
Someone
2 would be
soon enough.
perfect. But at least we'll have a quick adjournment. Yes, we're adjourned.
Did you change the password? Remember they changed the password? We'd like to call to order the Board of Education regular meeting for Tuesday, September 25th, 2018, and ask Ms. Crossley to lead us in the pledge.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
And Mr. Press.
Yeah, before we get to the prouds, I have as I often seem to do, have to ask for a moment of silence for a gentleman that worked in this district for a long time. If you're over up at 400 Exec, the Hilda Bonavist on that plaque is Philip Perugini. Name always stood out for me because my wife had an uncle, the same name. But he passed away last month, and he worked in the district for 36 years, from 1948 to 1984. He was a custodian, mainly at the high school, and I wouldn't remember him necessarily, but I ran into his son. His son was a phys ed teacher in Sleepy Hollow. My son went to Sleepy Hollow. I ran into him a few years ago at Phelps. He had his dad, I had my dad there. And we were talking, he says, "You know who he is?" I said, "Hey, he looks familiar," he told me. I said, "All right, yeah, I know him from the school." He says, "Yeah, but do you know who he is?" I said, "No." He said, "You ever read Band of Brothers?" I said, "I read Band of Brothers probably twice. It's a great book." He says, "He's one of the last 6 original Band of Brothers." Pretty impressive. Unimposing man you'd ever meet. And I said, "Really?" I said, "I don't remember him in the book." He goes, "Well, fortunately," he says, "I wouldn't be here if he was in the book." He says he jumped on D-Day and landed in a hedgerow and broke his leg. Spent 24 hours before he was evacuated to England, and came home, had a family, and worked here for all these years. So we had a true American hero in our midst, and I think he is worthy of a moment of silence. But I also, as I thought about this, I thought, we probably have a lot of people in this district that have done things that we may not know about that were significant, maybe not this significant, but certainly significant. Maybe it's just something as we, as you're around the district, ask the people, teachers, anybody that works here, what's your story outside of school and being a teacher or a custodian or a bus driver? So he was a member of the Band of Brothers, the 506th Parachute Infantry Regiment, Easy Company, and if you've seen the movie or the series or read the book, he was part of that history, and he walked these halls for a long time, and I'm not sure anybody knew it, and that's kind of a shame that we didn't get to find that out. I'm happy to, whenever I see Harry and Ron doing that veterans project, this is the kind of thing they would have jumped all over. So just a moment of silence for a hero. Thank you.
Thank you. And thank you for telling that story. That's pretty amazing. Mr. Sanchez. It's like a booby trap.
All right, this was a last-minute addition and falls in the category of prouds. And I think it also just speaks to our community and the spirit of our First Steps program and the individuals that work within the context of our First Steps program. I want to thank Carrie Ann Sipos, who, say, less than an hour ago said, take a look at this, and we both agree that it speaks to, it was something we thought the board should see in our community, hopefully can appreciate as well. So just, and then we'll add a few more comments at the end. So it's a little dramatic, but nonetheless, I think some of the words that you saw that stood out for me are this word amazing. Like, you got these number of individuals that came together throughout our community, along with the, our First Step staff that gave of their time. Carrie Ann Sipos, I walked in and she was scraping, she ended up painting, so if you thought she does it all, she does do it all. But it was just humbling how everyone came together as we transitioned and moved First Steps into the First Presbyterian Church. And, symbolic, you can see the floors, everything just redone. And I want to thank everyone that was involved, our staff who has worked tirelessly and given of their time gone above and beyond Saturdays. Thank Carrie Ann for all her effort in supporting and the logistics. I know Alita's been helping with the contracts behind the scenes. Ken Waldron has been very, very supportive in our buildings and grounds just to make sure things could be moved. And just our entire community for their support and everyone that has come together. But I think it also speaks to the impact that our First Steps program has had on our families and their willingness to come back and give of their time, because tomorrow actually we open up and we'll be supporting students in that setting. So, and it looks great, it really does. They've transformed the space. So just want to thank everyone that was involved, and I think fits appropriately within the context of our Prouds. So, thank you, everyone.
Certainly
Great,
does.
could I just add two other people to thank, if it's okay? It's really important, because when you create new partnerships, it's important to mention the people that are on the other side of the work. So I just want to recognize Pastor Jennifer Rodriguez, who opened her arms to us. It was like, come on, join us. And I have to thank Mr. Clemens, who is a parishioner there, but more than a parishioner. He is, I think, he's a serious leader there, and he helped us so much with some of the other staff members there, so I had to mention them.
Good stuff. So the kids are probably real excited, right, to get started.
Families and kids are really
Yes.
excited, so,
And so are we.
and so are we.
So continuing on our prouds, for today we have two OHS students. One, John Sukumar, who received the 2018 Rising Scientist Award, and Emma Montgomery, who was named the 2018 Merit Semifinalist, so congratulations to them. Our great family picnics have occurred throughout the district: Park, Brookside, Roosevelt, and Claremont School. And thank you to Ossining Matters for an excellent walk back on September 8th. Maggie Ford, Marcus Shaw, and Deborah Johnston were chosen for the New York State, I want to get this right, School Music Association All-State Conference. Our OBOTs attended the New York City Maker Faire with real BattleBots. Our district received SED Mentor Grant to help support our newest colleagues, and Fuel Up to Play 60 NFL Flag Football Grant for AMD and Brookside. And save the date for October 29th, our Crazy Hat Kickball. And we also have another proud that we didn't add onto this list, but at the end of August, our very own Superintendent Sanchez, he defended his dissertation and is now known as Dr. Sanchez. And we want to give him a big round of applause, and the cabinet and board. So this is from everyone here, cabinet, board.
We can start every board meeting like this.
Billy, Nicole, Joan, Brian, Carrie Ann, Alita, and all of us. Congratulations to you.
Thank you, everybody. Thank you. No, this is great. Thank you. Thank you. I'll
And
wear it
it's-
with pride.
It's
No
the
pun
old pride, and
intended.
it's the official colors as well.
Yeah, thanks so much, everybody. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Congratulations. So now we can move into our work session.
It's great. It's hard to transition from
We
there.
could start now. It's hard to transition from.
Yeah, so I'll set the stage and then I'm
Oh, I
going to turn.
forgot to tell you how to wear it. No, I'm kidding.
All right, I'm going to set the stage, and then I'm going to turn over to my two colleagues, Karen Sipos and Dr. Alm. As the board knows, it's in our 3-year plan, which we hope you'll approve later on this evening. One of the goals is to really review our math program and potentially adopt a program. The reason behind coming to you now is making sure that you understand the process that we intend to partake in. I mean, the process already has started. It started last year, and we had a variety of discussions around it. This is a really important decision as it relates to our curriculum and instruction through the lens of mathematics, and will have implications throughout our system. So there's a significant amount of work that's taken place to this point, and there's a lot of voice that is going to be gathered over the next few months so that we can come back to the board and make sure that we're ready for a decision. This is a point, too, that we want to make sure that the board is ready to give us some feedback. If there's some things, tweaks that you want us to consider, we hope that you can let us know now as we're starting this process, so that we can make the right decision and that you're ready to make the right decision when we formally present something for potential adoption, probably around mid of the year. It's also something that we collectively are going to need to consider, because it will have budget implications as well. So those are all variables that we're going to need to talk about together, but at the same time, why we're coming to you so early in the school year for that. So with that, I'm going to turn over to Carrie Ann and Dr. Ohm.
So, good evening. Feels like a long journey already in this work. But to know how excited everyone is to watch some of the teachers in the training sessions. So we have started some of the training sessions for the pilot, and they are really happy about the potential change and very hopeful about what it will do for our kids. So we're on the right track. So our work tonight is to just to engage in a little mini learning session just to bring an update to all of you on the process of finding a new math program. We are going to activate our prior knowledge and remind everyone what has happened, particularly what data we collected to put ourselves in this position right now. We're going to review the plans, the process plans for the rest of the pilot, talk about how the staff is involved in the exploration and what they're doing to pilot. We're going to review an assessment tool that we developed that teachers will be using as they work through the whole pilot that we will be looking at, and other assessment tools for parents and students as well, which is not up there. So just a reminder, when we started this a couple of years ago, we sent out a survey to parents, and we met with some small group parents, and what we found really was that our parents, they were about 71% of them felt like our program was effective. There wasn't anything super dramatic or anybody that was upset. They thought it was okay. They did speak at some points about feeling a little bit confused and wish that they had some more parent supports, but our parents found it rigorous. They found that their children were successful in math, but had hoped for more resources. We used that when we looked for programs. Student voice, we met in small groups with students. We interviewed kids individually, just a reminder about that. What we learned from them is that they really wanted to have more fun in math, if I were to sum that up. Like, just we need to be working together in groups. They said out loud to us, we need to be playing games. We need more choice, that they felt, I think in our words, that it was all a little too structured in paper and pencil. We also asked our teachers a lot of questions, and I thought this was probably the most telling. They felt like it was aligned to the Common Core, but at the end of the day, not really helpful in meeting the diverse needs of our students. So they felt like they needed more resources. They thought that it didn't really match 21st century skills. There wasn't enough support for our families at home, and definitely a need to support our second language learners and special education students as well. So yes, aligned, but not really meeting the needs of our students in the district. So we used all of that to create a deep study of what was going on, and here were the recommendations, if you remember. We wanted to really bring more of a workshop model to math, which we have done. We worked on differentiation through stations and small groups, which we have done. We put a very serious focus on discourse, and that we have done. And this past summer, we put a really deep emphasis on that work. Math, language, and conceptual games have been the new work for us. Trying to move our teachers away from the drills of games, but more the conceptual work of games. So we continue to work because we want our classrooms to be right for our children, even when we're transitioning. Unpack the new standards. We're familiar with the new standards. Not much has changed in math. We had communication tools were in place for families. Our goal was to evaluate our current program, which we did, and we learned quickly that wasn't good enough for our students, nor was it being updated in any way or form. We reviewed new programs, and we did conduct visits to school districts.
Okay, so just give you a reminder of our timeline. We have had previous updates prior to this evening, but in the fall of last year, we had created a rubric. So before we start examining different programs, we really wanted to nail down what our most important priorities are in a potential program. So we created this rubric, and we began to research different programs, took in school of visitations, and then even a little bit of an explorer, or maybe call it a pre-pilot at AMD. We did some work with that. And then this past spring, we narrowed down our search from a wide search to a narrower list of 3 and 2, so one program in common, a total of 5 between the 2 different K-5 and 6 through 8. And we've readied ourselves to engage in a pilot. So we've been going through training. Disciple's going to tell you a bit more about that. And the teachers have the materials in their hands, and they're working with, starting to work with our kids in these 5 different programs. So our hope, as Mr. Sanchez highlighted, is that after this pilot this fall, by mid-year in the winter, we'll be able to solidify and in advance of our budget season, be concrete about our choice. So as I mentioned, there is a pretty elaborate rubric here, just to highlight a few areas. It is kind of small up there for the viewing audience at home. Alignment to New York State math standards, rigor, explicit instruction, student-centered, differentiated instruction, assessments, rubrics, teacher-friendly with lots of PD. Like the training that comes with this is a very important aspect in the choice of a program, and how responsive the company and the local trainers are. ELL support, of course, and that it needs to be a bilingual program. 21st century skills, technology, and support for parents. Budget, of course, and then program longevity. Is it brand new to the scene? Has it been battle tested in other districts? And does it have the reputation it needs to be able to support our expectations? So I mentioned 5 envisions is shared in both pilots in the elementary, K-5 and 6 through 8. Big ideas and illustrative are at 6, 7, 8, and math and focus and investigations are the other ones at the elementary. And if you forgive me again for reading from the slide, these things are all informed. In addition to that rubric, we're always thinking about these mathematical practices. These are the types of things that we're trying to lift in a program, making sense of problems and perseverance in solving them for students to be able to reason abstractly and quantitatively, for students to be able to construct viable arguments and critique the reasoning of others, to be able to model mathematics, use appropriate tools, attend to precision, look for and make use of structure, and look for and express regularity and repeated reasoning. So this is the bar has been raised in general in mathematicity, and what the definition of mathematicity is, and what we expect our students to be able to do at benchmarks along the way. So in addition to examining all these programs, we wanted to be able to see some of our top choices in action. So we did do and conduct 4 school visitations, and had at least a full or half day with the teachers and administrators utilizing these programs, and we learned a lot in doing so, because each of these districts went through a search process somewhat recently themselves, so they'll also be able to reflect with us on some of the choices that they didn't make and why, and what their reasoning was behind the choices that they ultimately did make.
So it's really important for me to point out that the reason we went with some of these programs is because we are moving away from having our kids be answer givers to thinkers. So when we went in search of programs, that was really important for us. And the mathematical practices are really at the heartbeat of being a mathematical thinker. So once we figured out what we should be piloting, we were very concrete in our plans, and this has been our compass, this has been our checklist, this has been our own personal rubric, this is our accountability so that we stay on task and we do the pilot with great care and thought. So step 1 for us was about deciding on the pilot, which we did, and giving teachers materials if we had them, and meeting with teachers in June. So you should know that we met with all the pilot teachers before they left for the summer. We had some materials, but they just gobbled up what we had, and then they went online and were planning. I had summer notes from everybody saying, can I start in September, can I start in September, can I use it all year, can I use it all year, that kind of thing. So we had to really control the pilot so that we could compare with precision, right? So then our next step was to meet in September with the pilot teachers, which we have done, to launch the October launch. Teachers are meeting and getting materials and meeting with all the publishers, but they send over staff developers. You should know that the pilot design includes 3 products on the elementary, 2 teachers per product, so like Math in Focus, Singapore Math. So we've got 2 teachers on every grade level doing that pilot. They're all using the same units so that we can compare the units. And we have included dual language teachers, special education teachers, and general ed teachers so that we can respond to some of the things that the teachers were saying in our data collection process last year and to some of the things our parents were saying to us. So right now, that's where we are. Teachers are meeting with and setting up and getting ready for training. Today I was over at the middle school and I got to see a Skype training with open source illustrative math. And again, I mean, sitting around teachers, engaging in this, they are super hungry for the change and are excited about it. So once we've all been trained, we're going to hold a quick little October meeting, make sure everybody's got what they need, everybody feels good. I have to tell you, people are sending me, I have to say this about our teachers, they are remarkable, just remarkable. They're just rolling up their sleeves, doing all kind of learning on their own. People are sending me pacing guides that they created for the pilot. They've got shared documents, notes being sent, and just diving in on their own. And all 3 programs, teachers are talking about, really positive reactions to all 3. So we're going to do a quick little check. Are you ready? We're going to remind them that they have a rubric that they have to keep in mind and that they will be filling that rubric out because they have expectations beyond just the rubric. So we want to remind them as you go through this pilot, what do you have to do and hold on to? So we'll go over that. There'll be a letter that we send home to parents. And then our hope is late October, maybe, I think late October it'll work. Seems like we're on track, but no later than early November, we will launch. And teachers will be visited by leaders, math leaders in the district, conducting lessons, and there'll be a reflection process for our visits into classrooms. So we will be going in. They know they'll be having some additional observations, and we are creating a tool to do that as well. The other thing we're asking teachers to do is to save work. So we are going to be looking at student work and making comparative statements and collecting data on the student work and what we think is really representing those mathematical practices, which ones are showing us that kids are thinkers and not just answer givers. So they will be collecting work, they will be collecting assessments, and we'll be comparing them across the programs. We're hoping early January, that's when we're planning on reflecting and talking about the strengths of the programs, the weaknesses of the programs. Teachers will be sharing their evaluations with us, and they will also be presenting, doing a little presentation to the steering committee about what they saw were the strengths and what they saw were maybe some of the weaknesses. In addition, that's not up here, we've added that everyone, and they came up with this, that the teachers would conduct a lesson with the entire staff in each of their buildings so that the staff can have a feeling for each lesson, from one lesson from each program so that we can get some feedback from the staff in general. So we'll go a little bit beyond just the pilot teachers, although there are 52 teachers in the pilot altogether. So the steering committee will review and make some decisions. I did want to point out also there'll be some parent input, and we're working on that, so I don't have that to share with you, but we want that to be authentic, and sometimes just getting a little bit of homework it's not enough for parents to give us input, so we're thinking through how to get parent input and maybe do the parent input with the student input. So we're working on that because we want that to be effective for us in our decision making. And then after that, our decision will be made, hopefully, winter time, and we'll have to discuss some funding, including, and I'll just put it out there, help, is it a coach, is it a consultant, or what do we have to do internally to prepare for this work? And then our goal is for April, May, and June to be used for staff development, so our teachers feel really ready to launch in September. We're spot on with where we're supposed to be. So wanted you to see, we developed a tool for teachers. They'll be answering, obviously, what grade level, the program. We're looking for rigorous, high expectations for our students. We're looking for high-quality conceptual problem solving. We're looking for our kids to be deconstructing and reconstructing math problems and using mathematical language. We're looking for our kids to have an understanding of all the different math models to support their learning, particularly pictorial models that can help them learn. We're looking for programs that give kids an opportunity to represent their mathematical reasoning. Again, pictorial representation is super important in terms of thinking in math. We want to be sure that it supports our special education children and our second language students, that the materials for teachers are things that they can make sense of and not be bogged down by anything, which so far I have to say they feel really good about. We know that there is this balance of procedural skills and fluencies, and we want to be sure that both are there, and that there's not anything out of balance. We want it to be visually appealing to our kids. We want them really spending a lot of their time in application work, so we're watching for that. That our kids are active, they're not passive learners, that these kids are really working together and doing things, and like I said, more thinking than answer givers and anything else. That the discussion and interaction is built in. And so it goes on and on and on and on. And the very last one, the technology is in there. Although we are high-low people, we know the power of teaching. And so we've been looking for that balance. And the mathematical practices, I can't really stress that enough, really are important to us. So teachers have a pretty detailed rubric that they will be using, and we'll be collecting data and sharing it with you. But in addition, they will be presenting to us, they will be presenting to the staff, and we will have parent feedback and student feedback as well.
Yeah, so these next two slides are just a visual illustration of all of the math educators participating in the process as was outlined previously. We've very intentionally struck a balance between general ed, special ed, and E&L and dual language teachers. So it just gives you a snapshot of who is participating. And you see Envisions is the shared one that is the same in K-8. And then these are the other two at AMD.
So these are our plans. Like I said, we already had Math in Focus Singapore. Very exciting. We did a full day of training there. That's what the consultants required us to do to take on the pilot, and it was really well needed. It was a reminder of a lot of different things. One of which is our teachers need to do a lot of math together. So that was a really positive thing, and I look forward to whatever we decide, that being at the heartbeat of our professional development, teachers doing a lot of math and learning more about math on behalf of our kids. So we have Math in Focus. Today we did illustrative, and then we've got Envisions is coming tomorrow at the middle school, and then coming back on the 4th for the elementaries. And then we've got investigations coming on the 4th. We have 2 going on in one day. And big ideas on October 2nd. So we've got it all scheduled out, and teachers are ready. They've got everything they need. All materials are in their hands. They've been looking at things, and like I said, I have to hold them back. Just a tentative timeline and like what's ahead. October to early December, that's our goal, is to just have teachers teaching the same unit. They are taking out some of the materials to get kids warmed up to the concrete parts of the program, so that they're filling in little gaps to the actual unit that they're getting ready to take on. And then in December, they'll be doing presentations to the steering committee, and we'll be looking at their reflections and all the other data, and talking at this time, and I will say already we're talking about budget implications. So I'm already reaching out to vendors and saying, can you give me a price on that? So we're already talking about that, but there are other budget implications we'll have to consider. January, our hope is that we will have some decisions, and that you will be helping us make that decision on programming and support around all this. And then February and March, we'll be planning out what this is going to look like as we take on a new system for our kids. And then April, May, and June, some staff development. So our teachers are ready. And I think that's our update.
Any questions, or anyone want to comment?
Certain microphone. So very exciting that we're at this point. I was, as you were talking about how we've come to this decision, I'm also reminded of the 2013-14 year where we brought in the Common Core math and the modules and the new testing assessments and all the difficulty we had there. In fact, some of the modules weren't even written in Spanish or in other languages. So we came from a real difficult place, and it's very exciting that the teachers are enthusiastic. So really happy to be there, and I'm thinking maybe we can get a refund for the modules, I don't know, for some budgeting.
Will give us
I have a
extra
couple of
foundation.
places we can send it, or we can use it for part of our foundation, when we're building some things. But just looking at the programs, so let's just say we go with, so you have Envisions, that's, K through 8. So let's just say we like the, K through 5 of one of the other 4, but we like Envisions. Can Envisions break off and use the, 6th through 8th grade portion, as a combination? Because I see, obviously Envisions is adhering to K through 8, and then the other ones are really elementary. We have 2 elementary and 2 middle school. I think one of the things that has happened for our students over time with what I just talked about in 2013-14 was a lot of students weren't getting the foundation that they needed to progress into starting algebra in 8th grade, and we've accelerated some and some haven't, and I think it's been, unfortunately, and it's not any district's fault, it's what was put upon us from the state and from the federal government. So I hope to see that students who otherwise would have been accelerated into higher math classes will be able to get there and feel confident about it, because I think what we lost is a lot of confidence from parents and students about the Common Core math that came about, and quite frankly, the materials that we were using just to get through it. So I think that's really important, and I for one have experienced it personally. My daughter not being able to was in the middle of the Common Core algebra and the traditional algebra, and we did push her forward, and we were able to accelerate her, and she's now in first year of college taking Calculus 2 and doing very well. So I think our students can do that, but they really need that foundation. So I'm glad that we're here. One question I do have is, how did we choose the teachers for the various programs, or did they choose the programs themselves? How did you pick and choose? Or
There's
was
a
it
little first of all, we asked for volunteers who would like to pilot, and there were a lot of people who wanted to pilot, so we couldn't take everyone, and everyone knew that. There were some people we asked, which one would you like to do? But It was a combination. We saw some teachers doing in certain programs and others taking on another. It was some of their feedback, but also us just saying, you know, who would work well together for this particular one. So there wasn't a super strategy behind it. We kind of looked at all of our teachers. We could have put them anywhere. So there was, some people said, I want to do investigations because we did it before. So when they said something like that, we said yes, and then we filled in the spots kind of thing. Every single person involved, these are people that were, you know, when you get the hands raised like this, you know they're going to take it on.
And then what are our plans to explain to the parents of those various grades that we're piloting these
So
math
all of the
programs?
parents, there's already a letter that was developed to send to all the parents in the classes of the pilot. So they will be informed, actually in the very near future, that they will be, when their pilot is starting, we've been waiting for training
Yeah.
so that we can nail down the date, the start date. Then a letter will be sent, and then, like we said, we'll be sending a survey for parents and students and running some small groups, focus groups, to ask parents how they felt about it.
Okay, great, thank you, thank you.
Yeah, I guess when I looked at this presentation, the teacher voice slide really jumped out at me, how the teachers don't feel what's being used now is, there's just confidence in it was so low, 13, 15, you know, under 35% for a lot of it. So I think having that many teachers involved in this pilot, I would hope that at the end of it, whatever program we land on, we'll see the numbers in the 80s and 90s for, you know, support and 21st century applicability, and it just, this is sorely needed, and I'm glad we're doing it, and I'm glad you've done it in such a thoughtful manner, and I think, you know, this won't be, and what are we doing next year for math, and what's the next new thing? I think I hope this will be something that, you know, 5 or 10 or 15 or 20 years down the road, you'll tweak it, and that would be great. I think that's, I'm pretty sure that's your goal, and I think this is the right way to approach it to get there. So I look forward to this whole process rolling out.
I want to kind of echo what we've heard. I think the process is impressive. The work that you're putting in to do this with fidelity is important. I'm going to break off from that comment and editorialize for 1 second, which is, you know, there was a state curriculum that was really kind of arm twisted on a lot of districts at the end of the day. And basically it's been abandoned, and it wasn't developed in languages for all the districts. And this is the perfect example to me of why it's so important that we make decisions locally, because the choices of programs really need to match up with the kids. And so I hope that, you know, state ed abandoning this is more about, maybe less about funding, but more about a concept of really those decisions shouldn't come out of Albany, but really need to be kind of brought here together. So I'll finish with that. I really appreciate the student voice piece of this. I think one of the things that I was extremely concerned about with the shift to the modules was at the early ages, the really manipulatives and physical learning, you know, and so I think the idea of a workshop model, kids speaking, using manipulatives, especially at a young age, is really, really critical. So I hope that we're able to, as we look at the programs, kind of keep that in mind. It sounds like you're on the path, and so, but that'll be, whatever decision we come to, those will be the questions I'll ask, is what are we doing in kindergarten, and how are we getting kids away from pencils and paper and doing things, you know, with blocks and that sort of stuff. I just, again, I want to echo the care and thought that you've put into this and what you've presented to us tonight is orders of magnitude so far from where we've been, and I just really appreciate that and look forward to seeing where this comes in.
Thank you. I do want to just point out that there isn't a program that on our list that does not have our kids sitting with the concrete manipulatives. Every one of them, for every lesson, they will have this in front of them. It's their learning tool. It's not a paper or pencil.
I will ramble for a second or two. I guess I struggle with a couple things as we fast forward to January. So you can remind me in January that I said what I said now. I think, this is one of those topics I would, we'll take whatever you guys and teachers and process the recommendation is and likely say I agree, because I don't think I don't know enough about math curriculums nor get the details. However, as your process shows, we do need to approve it in the budget and want to know that there's not something we missed. So I don't know the best way to suggest we do that, so we're comfortable in January doing that. I know from over the years that our board seems to like to see the two finalists of anything, so maybe there's a little bit more detail of, we recommended this, but this was the next one, and so you sort of know what you could have gotten, I guess, if that is that. I think to Bill's point, to me, there's definitely concerns currently that need to be addressed, and in addition to all your surveying and voices, I think there's the, what are people not getting today? I want to see the mapping of, how do these new systems address that, because that's, we know what we're not getting. I think you could talk to lots of people and get different inputs there, but really testing out this new system, the new model, and are we getting to the 80 to 90 to 100% favorable rating versus less. And this is where I'm 100% amateur and don't know all the terminology, so I'll just say this. I heard a term, something like, problem solving versus something else early on in the, making
Answer givers
answer
versus
givers.
thinkers.
yes.
Procedural math versus conceptual
Right.
math.
I guess, and this again, amateur, complete amateur, is whether it's either or, and that some of what I've sensed, in my sample of our math curriculum is that not all kids just intuitively know the mathematics tables and, practice enough in the details because they're off doing other things, and that because they don't know that they have that practice, they're not they miss things, they maybe get the problem, but the plus minus is off, or can't get it as quickly because they didn't practice enough. And so I clearly get that, it's not the 70s where you just sit around and, as robots repeating the times tables. But there's some value in internalizing it to where it's just as much as it can be part of it. So I don't know if that's relevant to what you said there, but I just.
So I think, I guess for me, our kids, if their conceptual work is super strong, their fluency comes in a much easier way. As a group of educators this summer, we did some of our own learning in preparation for the pilot, like is our own mathematical thinking, our knowledge base strong enough to move ahead with this evaluation. So we as leaders did some reading by some powerhouses, and we were reminded that yes, fluencies are it's super important, and there's this business that you have to know that. But it's so much easier when the conceptual work is there. When kids can envision math facts and can see it in all different ways, their ability to learn it quickly is accelerated. So we always want to start with the conceptual work and then build to the fluency work. And that's a really important piece to the programs that we're looking at.
If I could add to that just a little bit. The tone of the language, when we create a duality to it, it almost gives the sense that one over the other, but that's not really it at all. I mean, there's still plenty of room for mass practice to get to, another word is automaticity, You know, like your times tables, you have to memorize them when it comes down to it. But when you're fully immersed and understand the concepts behind it, then you get to that memorization a lot faster and beyond.
When you can envision things in math, that's when you're really good at it. So there's a lot of envisioning work that's needed for fluency work.
I just have a quick question regarding the process for evaluating how the students are performing in the various pilots after the pilots have been completed. Just looking at steps 5 and 6, it's unclear to me if the student work that's going to be completed and then brought to compare, is that going to be the same student work? Is there going to be a consistent evaluation over all of the pilots, or is it going to be different for each pilot? And if so, how do we compare if it's in sort of an apples to oranges comparison?
Same units, right?
Yeah, so we are sticking with the same units, though they are different programs. So it'll be tricky to do it'll look different. I mean, each program, their assessments will be different, but we'll be at least able to say it's the same unit. How did our kids fare on this assessment and in comparison to the other two? And we're asking teachers to be the experts in bringing the work that they can point out to us is really symbolic of effectiveness, math effectiveness. So it's not a perfect comparison because we're comparing 3 different programs, but at least we're measuring the same unit, and we'll have a chance to dialogue around the success of our kids on an actual assessment, but also through the eyes of really important student work that teachers bring to it. But it's not perfect because it's 3 different programs.
I'm going to ask a dumb question, so please don't laugh. But can you remind me again? So when we have this, so envisions, investigations, math and focus, do they all go across K to 8, or one of them can? And
Yeah,
can we?
so-
I guess to Lisa Rudley's question before, there was,
I got this.
are we going to choose one for 6 to 8? I just
So
want to.
most of them do,
Okay.
most do, but to Lisa's point is that some are better at those foundations, some are better at K-5, some are better at 6-8. Some of them actually go all the way K to 12, although it's very unusual. And they each have different strengths at different levels. And so a lot of that often comes down to the authors of the program. So sometimes, and you have to dig that deep and that granular in the research and research who the actual authors are, not just the label or the corporation that's attached themselves to it. And so what you learn more about, and then some will originate with elementary expertise, and then it's kind of tried to scale up to middle school and beyond, or vice versa. There are very few that originate and have the authorship right in the middle, at the middle level. And so that's one of the things that I think it's Envisions in particular that was attractive to us that way, is it kind of grew outward both directions. Does that help?
Yeah, it does.
Okay.
So it's possible that we are going
Could
to
have 2
pick
different-
2. Okay, okay.
It's very possible to have 2. But I will say that today when I was with the middle school, there was a teacher that was once a 5th grade teacher. She looked at me, she said, "Did you plan this?" They all think I have the answer. I don't have the answer. "Did you plan this?" Because they were being trained in illustrative today. And she's like, "This is a super amazing connection to investigations." My point is we went not after so much the content, but the big ideas in math. This is we're looking for more of a constructivist approach, where kids are looking at the concrete of math, looking at envisioning, right, and pictorial work, and then going to the abstract. All of that that's what lines up all these programs. So it would be perfectly okay for us to have a different program in the elementaries than in the middle school.
So they'll kind of flow one into the other?
Yep.
Okay, thank you, thank you. Any other comments, questions?
I want to make a point. Number one, point I shared before, just the gratitude I have for our colleagues and the work that they're doing around this, and to make such an important decision and being thoughtful in that. But I do want to respond just briefly. I think discussion of budget came up, and when you look at the rubric, it's just one sub-bullet of a larger context of real important items. And so I just want to make sure that we have a common mindset that we should really make the best decision and choose the best program for our children, and then determine how we can budget for it and really strategize around that, and not settle for something that arguably is of lesser cost. That is, so that being one, and I know we won't, but I just want to be out there. And we can strategize around that, meaning to the board in that discussion is, if we make the decision in January, it behooves us to do that, because we may say, okay, we're going to pre-purchase some things, meaning that we may use a little bit of this year's money to purchase some of the items, and then in turn budget some additional funds for the following year. So we may use some of this year's textbook funds to support the work. So we can piecemeal some of this in a variety of ways. So I just want to make sure that we, in the end, we can share various items, but the ultimate decision is going to center around what's the best program for our kids, and having the various voices around that, and then we can figure out the strategy around that. Carrie Ann made reference to additional support, that being coaching, and that's come up often in every meeting I've been in. The idea of math coaches have surfaced. I think we need to strategize around that as well, because we're cognizant of the need to support the work and the teachers in the classrooms. So I think one of the things that we do well is be creative and restructure some things, so we're going to have to do that, and that's why it's so valuable to make the decision in January, because then we can wrap our heads around what this looks like. And the other part is, associated with that is we actually are, connected to this, as we just kicked off a meeting with our administrators around the budget, so that we can start soon and actually be ready. Our goal is actually to be done, for the most part, around the time that the governor is putting out his budget, which is much earlier than we have in the past. So when the governor comes out and speaks, we already have a general sense of where we are, and we've had all our meetings, and then we can strategize to see what other things we need to do, and based on that. So I think it all ties in really, really well around the decision. But I'm actually just as excited as the teachers. It's time to go with the modules, and we're just deciding on which decision it is. But I have to say, everyone sees a shiny car and everyone seems excited. That's true. When they're surrounded by it, so it's a matter of
Mathematical squeals everywhere.
so you gotta. Anyway,
Thank you very
everybody.
much.
Thank you, everybody. Thanks, Brian.
I know we have some audience members, so I want to give you an opportunity. Maybe if you have any questions or comments on the math presentation, you can come up to the mic and certainly express any questions or comments. Thank you. Okay.
So the next is more so a board discussion. Lita Zuber attended a meeting around charitable funds with Amy Paulin, Assemblywoman, and just wanted to give an update, because it does have some implications for us as a school district, as a community, but also, what direction we may want to take on as a board and as a district. So I'm going to turn over to Alita, and want to thank her for taking the time to actually physically be present during the meeting, so you can hear firsthand what some of the recommendations and strategies are from Assemblywoman Paulin's office. So, Alita?
As you know, the Tax Cuts and Job Act limited the amount of SALT deductions, state and local tax deductions, to $10,000. So in response to that, New York State allowed school districts, they enacted legislation to allow school districts to develop a real property tax credit, to develop a charitable contribution fund to give taxpayers a property tax credit of up to 95%, so that they can offset the loss of the SALT, which is the state and local tax deductions, imposed by the Federal Tax Cuts and Jobs Act. So in response to this legislation, the IRS said that they don't believe that this type of fund would completely offset the contribution. So what they proposed was that taxpayers who make a contribution to a charitable reserve fund and subsequently receive a state or local tax credit that exceeds 15%, then the contribution must be reduced by his or her charitable deduction. So they were not allowing the deduction to take place because they feel that you're already receiving a benefit through the reduction in your state and local taxes, and you're not going to also receive the same benefit in your in getting a contribution, a federal contribution, charitable contribution reduction in your taxes. But what local tax experts have said is that there are 70 tax credit programs that have predated the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act, and that the IRS statement that people can take advantage of the charitable contribution fund is arbitrary and capricious. So Amy Paulin and David Buchwald are working together to develop a coalition of municipalities and school districts who may be interested in challenging the IRS, and they feel that they have a good standing to do so. Mainly because, once again, there are 70 other charitable contribution funds throughout the country, and they've been allowed to deduct their or get a credit for their contribution to the charitable contribution fund. The other thing that they feel is arbitrary and capricious is that business taxpayers who make business-related payments to charities or government entities are similarly awarded with a tax credit on the business, state, or local taxes, may continue deducting those contributions as business expenses without reducing their deductions by the amount of any tax credit received by the state or local level. So businesses are allowed to get the full benefit of a tax credit for contributions that they made to a charitable contribution fund, but yet they're saying that New York State cannot do that. New York State taxpayers can't receive the same benefit. So the law firm that was there, Baker McKenzie, really feels that they have a good standing for a legal challenge. And basically, Amy Paulin and Buchwald wants to know whether or not school districts will sign on to be part of it, and municipalities. There was discussion about a cost associated with it. $1,000 was thrown out there. It wasn't solid. It was just a number that she threw out there. She also stated that she didn't want to exclude school districts or municipalities who could not contribute. So if you wanted to be part of the coalition, that you still could be part of it and did not have to contribute the $1,000. But the gist of it is that the attorneys there presented the fact that the IRS is responding in an arbitrary and capricious manner to what New York State is doing, as well as Connecticut and New Jersey, when there's already these types of funds that are in the around the country, and there are also these types of funds for private school donations. So they're allowing people to get a credit on their taxes for private school donations, but yet they're challenging, or they're putting out regulations that saying that New York State taxpayers can't get a credit, even though there are other states that this is allowed, and even in cases where they're making contributions to private schools. So the question is whether or not the board wants to participate in coalition. Again, she said that Amy Paulin, Assemblywoman Paulin, said that she didn't want to exclude any school districts, so it wasn't mandatory. that you contribute. But again, the amount was, she kind of just threw a number out there. The other thing is responses to the IRS have to be published by October 11th. So if the board wants to participate in this, they do need to make a decision by way of a resolution before October 11th.
Go ahead.
All right, I'll preface this by saying that I certainly may not be right in my interpretation of this, but I think, well, it's just $1,000. To me, the likelihood of this succeeding and the number, how few I think community members it impacts in Ossining, I wouldn't support the spending the money. I think if we want to be involved for nothing, I think if you let some of the sort of overfunded districts pay this one, I'm for that. I don't. I've had this conversation with politicians and other people, and I'm not going to bore you with the hour-long conversation on the tax code and AMT and the fact that most people's taxes around here are going to go down. They just don't know it yet because they haven't paid their taxes yet, and they're fighting this, thinking their taxes are going to go up, and they're not. And it's hard when politicians are having conversations about tax code. So that just purely my own interpretation and stance on the issue. I would rather spend the $1,000 on lobbying for foundation aid than this one. I just don't know that it's going to be fruitful, but purely my take on the really exciting issue.
I mean, it's interesting. There's some fundamental questions here, right, in terms of the privates. I mean, we certainly, a few years back, there was an attempt in New York to bring private school tax credits into New York, and so it's interesting. I mean, I think it's important to have this coalition basically challenge because in the larger picture of just basically the forces at play. I mean, a lot of the other states are now circling the wagons because they feel like they're losing their tax credits at the end of the day and so you're going to have this play out in the courts, right? So being part of the conversation to me is an important piece. I think whether or not you contribute, I mean, I guess my overall sense of this is, if you don't contribute, does the work happen at the end of the day? And certainly within the region, there's a lot of districts that are concerned about this, and for the same reasons you talk about, it more impacts their residents more so than ours. I guess I don't have a strong feeling either way about contributing to the effort on this thing. It's $1,000. I think while every dollar counts, this is something that potentially, if you allow the regulations to stay in effect for private schools, at the end of the day, you open up a can of worms for New York, and so I think you got to kind of force this to a head either way. That's my sense. I mean, but I could be convinced either way on this one. I just think it's important. I would say I would opt for being part of the coalition, whatever capacity we decide to do it.
There's some question, and we had some discussion yesterday among my colleagues about whether or not we can contribute legally, because it's really not our fight, and we're not we're going to get our tax dollars regardless. So that's just a question that has to be answered, whether or not we can legally contribute.
So I guess maybe we should try and get an answer back for that. But I guess the question is, maybe for the board, is do we want to participate in this coalition or not? What do people feel about that?
I mean, some of the questions I have, and I could go either way on this as well, is when we talk about, do we know the impact yet of this, this tax change? Do people know the impact? To your point, how much is it really going to affect people here? Do people know that yet? I mean, we just had this whole math thing, and I got numbers in my head, and are we putting any numbers around, what the impact is? But then the other side of me says, two questions is, or three. there are 70 charitable funds throughout the country that exist that this is okay for. There are, credits for private school that this is okay for. And, businesses can contribute and individuals can't. I'd like to understand what the difference is, and I guess this is not a question that I guess could be answered tonight, but what does the IRS consider a difference between a business and a non-business that it would be allowed for one and not the other? And if these answers are nonsensical, then I would say, okay, well, they have a lot of clarity to provide around those things. But given the, I guess I'd have to see the numbers and see what the impact is. I mean, that's what it always comes down to for me. If it's unfair, if it's just something in spirit, what's the concrete kind of impact is what I'd like to try to understand a little bit better.
Yeah, I can't provide that information. Maybe Greg can, but
Yeah, I think that's going to be a challenging thing to get in the timing of this. I mean, I think generally speaking, for our community, I don't know that either way this is going to make a huge impact for us financially. But what will make a huge impact is if basically they're able to maintain the private school tax credits and they're able to bring them into New York at the end of the day. And if there isn't a coalition built ready to fight that, which this is the beginnings of, then you've got a bigger issue. So to your point, right now for Ossining, there's a few people that would benefit from this probably, and a lot of people that probably it doesn't make a difference for. For a community, some other communities in our area, there's a lot more vocal support for this. I think you saw Scarsdale passed the deduction, tried to do it, and I think that was in response to their community. But I know, just talking from a lot in the region, there's others interested in that. So the question in my mind here is, the IRS has forced a very interesting question. Are they going to let these deductions stand for these other things, or are they going to force it? Are people going to be the same as a business or not? Those, I think, are, Citizens United happened because coalitions of people really weren't pushing together, and I think that to me is the appeal of this at a relatively painless way of doing it at the end of the day. So that's the value I see. I don't see the value in benefiting anybody in the community, and by the time we had those numbers, it would be too late.
And to your point, I would gather that the districts that are getting overfunded probably have a little bit more money than we do to do that. So if there's a way that we can join in this, if that would be the case, just by virtue of not understanding the difference between the business and the non-business, I have to say that the private school versus the public, that really bothers me. I don't like that. I don't really want that to stand. And if it was just for that, I would say, it's just let's have fairness here. And there doesn't seem to be a clear-cut answer as to why. But if there's a way that we can do it without what is a little cost to us, I guess that would be the way I'd like to approach it if we could.
Can I just ask a clarification question? When we're talking about a coalition, and then you had mentioned that the lawyers thought that there was a good chance, what exactly are we talking about? Are we talking about eventually litigation? And then the consequences to the litigation, if Ossining School District is included as one of the litigants, or I don't know, there's a class action to fight this. Did anyone discuss whether there would be penalties if we were unsuccessful? And if so, how those penalties would be divided amongst the litigants or people in the coalition? Is there any discussion of that at all? I just don't want us to get into something that has consequences down the road that we're not considering fully.
it was basically a presentation by the law firm Baker McKenzie, basically trying to explain to us why they feel they have a good, why they feel that they can challenge the proposed regulations. Part of it was getting testimony from different entities before the regulations are finalized, which is by October 11th, when I guess the hearing period closes. So they were trying to get feedback from certain entities about how this impacts them, but there was no discussion as to how the members that would be part of the coalition would be impacted.
Okay, so there was no discussion of, you know, you pay $1,000, you join the coalition, and that money is going to directly be used to pay attorney's fees? I guess I'm just trying to understand it a little bit.
It was to pay their attorney fees, their research fees.
Okay.
But they made it seem as if they're doing it more, give us what you can. Try to give us what you can give us so we can, you know, do this challenge.
Okay.
But there was no solid fee that they said, well, this is how much it's going to cost, and this is how much each school district or each municipality is going to have to pay. She literally just threw out a number. That's how informal it was.
Did they mention any discussion of who, for example, would be the plaintiffs in the case? Okay, thank you.
Just presented it as a coalition.
Okay.
I can actually share with you the PowerPoint. They did have a PowerPoint. It was quite lengthy, but I can share that with you.
Alita, I might have missed this in here, but are they also asking for local municipalities
Yes.
to contribute as well?
The village was there. I think Dana was in attendance. I don't think you guys saw each other, but she made reference to having participated in the meeting, and I haven't talked to her formally, just some email exchanges about the meeting, but implied that they may have an interest in being part of this.
I just wonder if maybe there's some coordination there where we don't, obviously if we all contribute 1,000, that's 3,000, but if we coordinate and say, you know, one of us will contribute, I don't know, just seems like another decision we're making in a vacuum that affects all entities.
I mean, I think I'm comfortable to state, you know, from a foundation aid perspective, comparatively speaking, our district basically is, you know, would be agreement in principle, but not going to contribute, you know, for other financial reasons. I think that would gather some support from others. I don't think you'd have a big challenge around it. As far as the penalties, I think the penalties that people were concerned about and talking about up front was if you actually enacted the fund, and then could you get hit with that afterwards? I mean, I think this is going at the right of the IRS to do this or not, so I don't know that there'd be penalties for, you know, that would be pretty extreme, I would think. You never say never, but I mean, it would seem like a very punitive thing to do for fighting for an idea, and that's really what the coalition is at this point. And my sense is you could drop out, you know, I mean, with any of these things, you could decide to continue along or not, but there seems to be momentum. There seems to be people within the region working it, and I think for the two pieces I said, you know, like I said, you don't know where this is going to go. You don't know what's going to happen, but I can guarantee you if you don't take on this, you know, if you don't make noise, the private school tax credits will stay in place and probably expand at the end of the day, because we know that's already been tried in New York.
So would we have to pass a resolution tonight, or we'd have to give a green light to maybe do it at the, because our next board meeting is when, October 10th? Which is the
Correct.
day before this. Does that give us enough
So
time?
I think what I'm hearing from the board is that there's an interest in being part of it, but not contributing financially to it. Yet there are some questions that maybe we can, some of the questions that you asked, that we can just clarify and just see where things are,
Right.
but yet still continue to provide you updates associated with it. So we can give them sort of a soft, willing to participate in terms of name, but not necessarily from a financial perspective. I can make sure or see from the municipalities, both the town and the village, and see where they are, just so you have it in hand, and then see where it is. I mean, I don't know who is really jumping on board just yet, or we don't know, from those that attended and subsequent meetings that took place. So we can try to gather that as well. Does that seem like the right direction? Okay, sounds good.
And we had one more item, one for ETA. I haven't, okay. So we don't think- Okay. Any comments from our audience? We have a mic here if you want to step up to the mic. If Any comments on our discussion? No? Okay. Okay. So then we will move into our regular meeting. Is there anything in this kind of block of resolutions from 4:1 to 4:15 that anyone would want to move out for a sec or have a separate discussion on? Okay.
410, do you want to discuss the resolution
Yep.
separately? Or?
Yeah, I think we should, all right?
Yeah, thanks.
Okay. So why don't we do, I'll take a motion
No,
for
sorry, not 410.
Four-
411.
4:11, yep.
411.
Well, do we have?
We have to
Yeah,
do
we have to
4:10 and 11.
Decide 4:10, right?
Yeah, we have to decide 4:10 and then discuss 4:11, so,
Right.
yeah.
Take out 411.
Gotta be there, so.
So the motion would be then for 4:1 to 4:9 and then 4:12 to 4:15.
410. Just take out 411.
Yeah.
But the 410 is a resolution to appoint a
You have to decide on who the
delegate.
delegate's gonna be.
decide on the
Yeah,
delegate.
4:1 to 4:9,
Yeah.
and then 4:12 to
Yeah,
4:15.
just, you have to, yeah.
We gotta fill in the
okay.
blanks.
So then I'll take a motion for 4:1 to 4:9 and 4:12 to 4:15.
So moved.
Second.
4:1 is a resolution regarding the appointment of an impartial hearing officer. 4:2 is a resolution to adopt revised policy 8510, meal charge and prohibition against meal shaming as a second reading. 4:3 is a resolution to approve a memorandum of understanding with Girls Inc. of Westchester for Annam Daughter Middle School. 4:4 is a resolution to approve a memorandum of understanding with Girls Inc. of Westchester for Roosevelt School. 4:5 is a resolution to approve an amendment to an agreement with Julia Dykeman Andrus Memorial Inc. 4:6 is a resolution to approve a memorandum of agreement with Cardinal McCloskey School. 4:7 is a resolution to approve an agreement with Neighbors Link. 4:8 is a resolution to approve the minutes of the special meeting of August 1st, 2018. 4:9 is a resolution to approve the minutes of the regular meeting of August 22nd, 2018. 4:12 is a resolution to appoint additional consultants for the 2018-19 school year. 4:13 is a resolution to approve an agreement with First Presbyterian Church of Ossining. 4:14 is a resolution to adopt policy 8121.1, opioid overdose prevention, as a first reading. And 4:15 is a resolution to adopt the 2018-2019 Ossining Union Free School District 3-year plan. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? I'll take a motion for 4:10 and 4:11.
So moved.
Second.
4:10 is a resolution to appoint a delegate to the New York State School Boards Association Annual Business Meeting, and 4:11 is a resolution regarding the New York State School Boards Association 2018 proposed resolutions. So 4:10, who is attending again this year? It's
I'm
Frank?
required, I have to be there, yep, I'll be
Frank,
there.
Greg, and Lisa. Okay. So we just need to appoint a delegate. Do we need two? Right, we need a
I would just
backup?
appoint somebody in a backup.
Okay,
I'd like to nominate Frank Schnecker to be our delegate.
okay. We
That's
need a
fine,
second.
I mean, I'm gonna be on the floor anyhow, if you wanna be on the floor, or somebody else wants to be on the floor. You can be the primary and I can be the backup, because otherwise you're kinda sitting out. But it's also Saturday morning, so if you don't wanna go back down to the city on a Saturday morning, I'll be there.
Oh. And,
You want a chair?
Yeah.
Would you like a chair?
Are you going on Saturday?
Yes.
Then you should be I think you should be the delegate, I think that would be good.
Okay.
It's a way to get prime scene.
Okay.
It's a lot of fun. The paddle is awesome.
And then
All right,
would
so
Greg-
we'll nominate Lisa to be the delegate and I'll be the backup delegate.
Okay. So Lisa then will be the delegate and Frank will be the backup. And
Or Greg
Craig
can
will
be
be the
the
backup to the backup. Okay. Any further discussion?
Thanks.
Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Abstentions? Okay, so 4:11 is the resolution regarding New York State School Boards Association 2018 proposed solutions. Discussion.
So we could spend a lot of time on this, we could spend a little time on this, we could move this to the end of the meeting. I can give you the controversial ones. Most of these were kind of easy. But I would say, why don't we put this off till the end of the meeting and do
Okay.
our other stuff first? Is
Okay.
that-
I'd say we could put it to the end of the meeting and then maybe go from the most controversial to the least.
Yeah, I mean, I think we could knock it off in a couple
Yeah.
minutes, but I would say, you never know. We could be into the
We could
conversation for a
also-
while.
We don't have to finalize it today. Right?
That's
We-
true.
We could, I'm just saying, we could do the quick version today, and if there's something we want to think about
Or if you go home and read it and come back.
we could know where our yeses and
Okay.
nos most likely are.
Yeah, I think that's a good idea, actually. So what we'll do is we'll go through the rest of this, the resolutions, kind of get them through, come back to this. If there's any questions, then we know we have at least one more meeting before we have to make any decisions, yea or nay.
Sounds
Sound
good.
good? Okay.
Table 4.
We'll table 411
Yep.
till the end of the meeting. I'll take a motion for that.
So moved.
Second.
Thank you. I will take a motion for 5-1.
So moved.
Second.
5-1 is a resolution to accept recommended placements. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? One abstention. Okay, I will take a motion for 6-1 through 6-17.
So moved.
Second.
6-1 is a motion, excuse me, a motion to approve the treasurer's report for the month of June 2018. 6-2 is a motion to approve the budget and revenue report for the month of June 2018. 6-3 is a resolution regarding acceptance of donation of 10 hands-only CPR kits from Phelps Memorial Hospital. 6-4 is a resolution regarding the donation of funds from the class of 2017 from OHS. 6-5 is a resolution regarding acceptance of donation of funds in memory of Dr. Paul Freed for the purchase of district buddy benches. 6-6 is a resolution regarding an increase in the budget for the driver education program. 6-7 is a resolution regarding acceptance of gift of school supplies from All Star Products. 6-8 is a resolution regarding acceptance of gift of school supplies from General Electric Corporation. 6-9 is a resolution regarding acceptance of gifts of school supplies from Costco. 6-10 is a resolution regarding a donation of funds for school supplies from the Ossining School District. 6-11 is a resolution regarding our certiorari refund payment for Briarcliff Ventures LLC. 6-12 is a resolution regarding a certiorari refund payment for Tappan Arms, Inc. 6-13 is a resolution regarding acceptance of donation of 6 office chairs from MSCO Marketing. 6-14 is a resolution regarding the acceptance of a donation of 10 CPR kits from Active International. 6-15 is a resolution regarding a SECRA negative declarations for security and entrance at Park Early Childhood Center. 6-16 is a resolution regarding an increase in budget for the dual language program. And 6-17 is a resolution regarding interfund transfers. And the board would like to thank Phelps Memorial Hospital for their donation of CPR kits that has a value of $649. Also thanking the OHS class of 2017 for their donation of $6,779 for the Ossining High School. The donation of $756 in memory of Dr. Paul Freed to purchase the buddy benches. That's district-wide. The All-Star Products donation of school supplies. General Electric Corporation donation of school supplies. The donation from Costco of 140 backpacks. And we have a donation of, I believe it's $1,500 from a couple of different
Croton Lions,
Croton
Ossining
Lions, Ossining,
and Grace Hall.
the Lions Club of Ossining Charities and Grace Hall Limited. MSCO Marketing for their donation of 6 chairs valued at $600. And the Active Internal, we thank them for their donation of 10 CPR kits valued at $250. The certioraries are, I don't think I added them up all the way, but the Briarcliff Ventures comes out to $3,771. And the Tappan Arms certiorari is $28,766.35. Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? 7-0. I will take a motion for 7-1 through 7-15.
Can we,
Or do you want
because
to
you're
break
going
them
to
up?
abstain from
I know we have a
7-4, so
couple.
can you pull out 7-14?
So we're going to pull out 7-14.
No, I'm sorry, it's 7-15.
Okay, so we have a couple to do. So we have 7-15.
7,
And we have-
sorry, 7-6 is going to be pulled as well.
Yep. Okay. So we can go from 7-1 to 7-5? I'll take a motion.
Second.
7-1 is a resolution regarding professional staff rescind appointment. 7-2 is a resolution regarding professional staff resignation. 7-3 is a resolution regarding a civil service staff resignation. 7-4 is a resolution regarding support staff resignation. And 7-5 is a resolution regarding bus attendant resignation. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? I'll take a motion for then 7-6.
So moved?
Second.
7-6 is a resolution regarding professional staff appointments. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Abstentions? So we have one abstention? So that's 7-6, that's a 6-1. I'll take a motion for 7-7 through 7-14. 7-7 is a resolution regarding a civil service staff appointment. 7-8 is a resolution regarding support staff appointments. 7-9 is a resolution regarding bus attendant appointments. 7-10 is a resolution regarding professional staff appointments for before and after school programs. 7-11 is a resolution regarding civil service staff appointments for before and after school programs. 7-12 is a resolution regarding support staff appointments for before and after school programs. 7-13 is a resolution regarding per diem substitute removals. And 7-14 is a resolution regarding per diem substitute appointments. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? That's a 7-0. I will take a motion for 7-15.
So,
Second.
7-15 is a resolution regarding approval of school volunteers. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? So that's a 6-1. And we would like to thank all of the school volunteers. There are so many of them. I normally do name them, but I think there are about 3 or 4 pages of them. So
Yeah.
we'll just thank all of them.
So I just want to clarify in the context, because I think Ms. Crossling's abstaining in certain areas had to do a little bit with our conversation around destination imagination. So just to clarify for the board, we've had some long conversations about the program. We see a significant amount of, some real value in what it has to offer our children. The question became for us, is it its own entity that receives funds and potentially versus something that's run by the Ossining School District? Ms. Sipos and I, along with Ms. Crossan, we met and discussed various ways and various options. We want to make sure that every child has an opportunity to participate, there's equity associated with it, but also maintaining the good work and what we see our students participating in. So at this point, the work will come through the district. It'll be in essence, quote unquote, a district-run program. And we'll ensure that it's open enrollment for all children and that there's no fees associated with it that initially was being collected at the time. That being said, that would give us about a year to kind of determine how we want to seek to support the program moving forward from the long term. Keep in mind that we have an Ossining Matters grant that helps to support a significant portion of the funds, and then we also thought of using some of our after-school funding, which is really small, a number about $3,000. I mean, small in terms of what it means and the number of students that are being served, to continue the program for now. But that aside, I do want to take a moment to thank. The list is long because there's a lot of community members and family members and that are coming and dedicating a lot of time to work with our children. So I want to make sure that I recognize their efforts in really supporting our children, and there's some really good things, and maybe there's value in at some point trying to organize a visit so we can all see some of the good things that are happening. So put some context, some thank yous, and understanding, follow up to Destination Imagination.
Thank you for that clarification. So we're going to go back to 411. So I'm going to take a motion for that
Or
again.
do you want to put that to the end and just go to the audience recognition?
Oh, maybe we do. Yeah, we could do that. So we'll go back to the audience. Any comments? Yeah, if you do, we have a mic there. You can come right up to the mic and. Just in general?
General, yeah, it's in general.
I'm gonna, I'm sorry. I
Wish
try
you
to
didn't
break
say
that
it
up and
before.
do it after every section, so.
Hello, my name is Jermaine Smith. For those of you who do not know me, I'm lifelong resident of Austin, alumni here. One child graduated and has moved on and living on the West Coast. I have a child here in Austin High School who's a junior and one who's in 4th grade, my youngest daughter. And I wanted to come and try to speak about trying to get a partnership and work with the schools. For those of you, again, don't know, a year ago I started my program. I've been doing a lot of volunteer work for years, but I wanted to become an officially recognized youth organization. So I recently did that about a year ago through the community center. So I'm now an Austin approved youth organization, just like ASO Soccer and Jessica Ayer Baseball and other organizations, called Project 105 Athletics. We were in the process of working with Coach Casey here at the high school with the varsity boys team, and we attended a couple practices, and it came back, I believe it was through the athletic director. Casey said we could not participate in any activities at the school unless we were an approved organization through the Board of Ed. So I am here to see what that process looks like, what's the requirements for that, and try to see if we can establish that partnership so I can move forward with supporting the kids. The time I was spending here was free time. I was donating my time here. I have a lot of equipment that I brought into the schools. We're working with resistant bands and balance pads and all this other stuff, and just trying to develop the kids here with the program. I do have a program, and I run clinics through the community center here, and I've been doing that for a year. And we also do personal one-on-one training, a combination of some free stuff as well as some paid stuff, but it's highly discounted. So, and I can give you any of those numbers or any questions you want to ask about that, but that's the gist of my reason for visiting today, as well as just attending the meeting.
We've waited a long time, so thank you for coming to the, and hanging in there, I guess, for lack of a better word. But at the same time, hope you found great interest in what was being presented at the same time. So we've exchanged emails, I think, at some point, and
Yes.
Apologize if there hasn't been clarity of process. But maybe I'm just looking to, between myself and Alita, we can figure out what that looks like.
Okay.
You see the value as an individual. I know you contribute and do a lot for the community, and thankful for that too, for our youth, and see what those opportunities. I could say immediately is when there's fees, that becomes a different, realm of our world in terms of schools and school districts. It's run through the rec department. It's a different entity, and we have a strong partnership with the rec department and actually trying to enhance that a little bit in terms of maybe providing opportunities for our children through the rec, but maybe in school facilities where there's space for it and time. But some of the other things we should probably work out. So between the two of us, and maybe it's a quick call even as early as tomorrow if we can figure out schedules, or before the end of this week.
Okay.
I can make that commitment for you and then determine what the next steps are from there.
Okay.
I know there's conversations, if I recall, some issues with court time and, right, was there
So-
trying to facility use type
Yeah,
things?
so there's a couple different things, and forgive me for not getting into details. I didn't want to take up too much of the time. But we have a couple different things that we're trying to do. So when I was working particularly with the school and working with the teams here, we were just doing some player development and work on strength conditioning, some endurance stuff, and that was totally free volunteering time, coming up here and doing that. We also were looking to have some court time to do practice, to develop a team that would also be like a feeder team. And we spoke to the coaches here to develop some of the kids who don't make the teams here or are not ready developed to, just want to get comfortable playing basketball. So we wanted to do a combination of the AU teams or just local rec teams playing against other municipalities. And we really don't have a facility to practice. I have we have people trying to pull us to Peekskill and other districts, but we're trying to, I'm Austin resident, I'm here, purchased a house here, everything. So we're trying to stay in the district, but it's tough. We do not have practice time. We're limited in the time we have at the community center. So what we're in the process of trying to do is trying to get corporate funding to sponsor the kids so that all of their activities would be free. It's just hard because we're a new organization and we didn't have really a portfolio to go to them and say, look, this is what we've done. Now we've done that over the past year. We've had youth expos, we've had an event at the park with the police department with a whole bunch of basketball and a bunch of different activities, and all those activities have been free that we've been doing. The clinics that we do at the community center, for example, we just started last week. We started clinics at the community center. They were getting 8 one-hour sessions. The young kids who are beginning basketball, it's $40 for all 8 sessions. So it's not a high cost. Most of the money goes back to paying for equipment for us to buy additional basketballs, wristbands, and things like that. So it's not a revenue generating business by any means. It's trying to supplement some of the costs that we have. So that's, and so the gym time at the school would be, one would be just to be a partner so we can come in and support the basketball team, but if we can get our own time to develop and have time for practice for the kids that want to be part of our program, that would also be beneficial. So that would be the 2 different roles that we would look into.
Okay.
I'm just gonna make a comment in case you come back at some point. And just for you guys to look at, the tricky one on this is always that there's other sports. So I know from last year, baseball and lacrosse, we're trying to get access to school gym time because the rec center is just only so big, and
Yeah.
that's the problem we have is we have gyms that are available. Rec center has a gym that's hard to get, and so you have to figure out. And the always issue is we let people in our buildings. Really, the rec often schedules to our buildings, but it's when a custodian's in the building that we are, I guess, able to allot time, and that's been always the challenge that we need to figure out if there's a way. It'd be great if we could expand usage of our gym when they're available. We just need to figure out how we do it in a way that then we're to get in the divvy up between basketball and lacrosse and other sport issues, unless there's some way to differentiate, like if you're free, you can have gym time at certain times. If you're not free, then you're on a different, I'm sure there's some way we have to divvy it up and prioritize, but then there's other ways to just,
And that
be
gym
great to
time, the first, as far as working with the school districts, that would be during their practice. So what we're doing, we're coming to their actual practice and work with them, so it wouldn't take additional gym time for that. The additional gym time would be for the practice time.
Yep.
So yeah, that would
Yeah,
be it.
and that's, it'd be great to just work with, the athletic department and facilities people just to see if there's ways to get more use of the gym, because I know even like rec, we coach rec basketball.
Yeah, we
and,
have the gym.
We always, like, park school is always allocated, but no one in the rec, we don't use it. So
Right.
you could be, there's just some going back to the drawing board and saying somebody could use this if it's available.
Right.
So in summary, first of all, again, sorry you had to wait so long, but I'm glad you waited. Myself and or Alita and I will reach out to you and we'll talk and then figure this out, and I'll make sure that the board's updated on our summary of a dialogue. And then in turn, from there, based on what we can and can't do, we'll sit with our athletic department to make sure that they're clear as to some of the things that we're trying to do and how they can help in that. Because
Okay.
they manage a lot of the fields, but just knowing that this is something that we want to do.
All right. Thank
Okay.
you, I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thanks.
The rest of our meeting is going to be kind of boring, but you're welcome to stay. He's in it for the long haul. But certainly, you could feel free to, stay or go. We're not going to call you out. But the
What,
board,
you're not
you
staying?
guys have to stay here.
Thank you.
I don't know.
That's all.
So
Turn
then,
the floor to Mr. Schnecker,
yes.
unless someone else wants the floor.
Yeah, so we'll give you the floor. We took the
Okay.
motion. It's already live, so.
So the committee spent a lovely day together in Latham, New York in August with a lot of wordsmithing that was going on in these meetings.
I
If
haven't
you
heard
ever
that
think we
expression.
wordsmith things, I think they found some new wordsmithers. The NISBA resolutions are kind of in your packet here. There's 20 of them. 18 of them were ultimately recommended by the committee, 2 weren't. There were really only a handful that had mixed votes. I'll just hit those first. The third one, which is NISBA supporting legislation to improve school safety by reducing access to guns. That was probably the most divided vote. A lot of the impetus around this was 3D printing and the availability of guns on a 3D printer. The other side of it was Second Amendment, and so at the end of the day, the committee felt this was a good issue to put to all the members to decide how they wanted to do. The lobbyists and board of directors from NISBA wanted broad language in order to be able to have freedom when they're talking to people. It wasn't necessarily to eliminate. I mean, clearly they understand the issues across the state with this one, but so that one, it'll be interesting to see kind of how the membership comes out. Number 6. 6 was a little bit controversial because it was making kindergarten attendance mandatory. And NISBA was pushing to basically, if you didn't attend kindergarten, you would have to go back, and for first grade, you'd have to go back and do kindergarten. So there was a sense of local control issue, different things for different communities, and this one some felt too broad. And so basically that was a split vote, but the majority supported it at the end of the day.
So let me make sure I understand that one. So if you didn't go to kindergarten and you're in first grade, you have to start from kindergarten in that school district?
Correct.
So if you never went to kindergarten?
So kindergarten's not mandatory today. Part of the impetus was to get the funding across the board. But as part of that, basically today, if you keep your child home in kindergarten and they want to go into first grade, they can go into first grade they go at their age, right? Depending on, there wasn't, for whatever reason, they wanted to force this across the board and basically, not have a test, not have any kind of screening out. And so for some districts in the room, it was just a local control issue at the end of the day is the best way to put it. So
I have a question about that also. If there was a private kindergarten or a private preschool, that would be okay. They could then go into first grade?
depends on the certification of the private. I mean,
Okay.
most likely the answer would be yes, but, I think that these are kind of, remember, this isn't legislation, these are resolutions, so it's
Well-
not really, it's what they're gonna advocate for. So the question is, you're gonna turn the lobbyists loose to make basically kindergarten mandatory and with that caveat to it. So there was dissent in the room, but the majority supported making kindergarten mandatory.
And just for our audience members, what we're just looking at now is the New York State School Board Association. These are proposed resolutions that will be voted on by all of the member districts throughout the state on October 24th, 25th, 26th, around there. So each school district gets to, or each member district gets to lend their voice to the resolutions that are being proposed there.
An agreement by, how many people on the resolutions committee? Like 20?
It's about 18, even representing each of the geographic regions of the state that they break it up in.
Yeah. So, but it just, right, if that group supporting it doesn't, the whole point of having the big conferences is so everyone votes, not just the.
Correct. So you may have some issues that basically geographically, the way the state plays out may cover more the geography of the state, but not the population of the state. And I think the gun control, the gun safety issue is one of those types of issues where certain parts of the state, it was an off-limits conversation, and certain parts felt that we need to discuss it, especially with the 3D printing of guns and that aren't traceable. The last one was the number 19 was requiring that all school board members complete 1 year of required training on cultural competency. The majority in the room felt that basically that should be a local decision versus a forced decision. So I was on the other side of that question, thinking that cultural competency is a good thing across all the districts, but that was a different outcome. So the rest of them, I think, are kind of, I think they're pretty straightforward. Some of these are, supporting vanilla ice cream and chocolate ice cream. So, I mean, they're just easy ones for school districts. So I think peruse it at the next meeting, or if you have a question, email me. I can give you some of the back. I mean, some of the dialogue was published in NYSBA's release too, with the conversation and the rationale. And again, these things are, what do we let the lobbyists go out and work on when they're meeting with legislators at the end of the day?
So it sounds like we want to, instead of, passing this resolution tonight to take these proposals, let's read into it a little bit more and then have it put up at the next board meeting. Okay?
It's fine by me.
All right. So then we'll take a motion to table this for the next board meeting, so.
So,
Okay. Any discussion from, board discussion from any committee meetings that might have met between the last meeting and now? Any updates from the board liaisons?
I just had the pleasure to attend a PTA, Ray, what was it called? Learning Cafe. And there were a number of parents there. It was actually held on the first day of school, and Ray spoke, and Brian spoke, and Carrie Ann spoke, and I thought it was excellent. It was really well received. We learned about the art of the unselfie again, and I also am on a lot of community message boards, and people were talking very positively about it afterwards and encouraging others and tagging each other to attend when the opportunity arises for the next session. So it was really nice. So thank you.
A couple things really quickly. I'd just like to thank Austin Matters for the work that they did, and I think the 5K was a success from the numbers that I saw. I want to thank the district and for their efforts for the back to school initiatives. I thought, certainly the videos were fantastic, but there was a lot of great things that, a lot of hard work went into it clearly, and a lot of thought. And so every year I think, what can you do better than the year before? You guys really turn it out and come out. So you set the bar very high there. The last one is, I just want to give an update on the Lower Hudson Education Coalition, which is our lobbying wing of the Westchester Putnam School Boards Association, Dutchess, and Rockland School Boards, and the Lower Hudson Coalition of School Superintendents. I think I got that right. We've hired a lobbyist in Albany, Ostroff Associates. We've had them since last spring. One of the things, we give them a lot of position papers at the end of the day on issues that come back out of these committee votes that happen. But one of the positive things that came out was the Board of Regents last Monday voted or they didn't vote, but they were pushing to pull out the opt-out penalty, financial penalty on districts at the end of the day. Just to recall, 95% of the districts in the state did not make the 95% participation rate. So this would have impacted Title I funds for school districts. I want to thank Regent Judith Johnson for being a vocal voice for us. I think there was a little bit of difference of opinions on this one at the end of the day, but I think it was asking the school boards and the school districts, they were a bit perplexed to see the commissioner propose this at the end of the day, is I guess the way I'll put it. That being said, I think our lobbyist organizations really worked well. Some of the things that they pushed back on last spring was the pushback of summer special education costs onto school districts. It was, one of those things like a few years back, the schools for residential placements, I think in schools for deaf students, were basically paid for by the state and pushed back to locals. This was another attempt, and I think having these relationships and working that in Albany really makes a difference. So sometimes it's the things we get done, and sometimes it's the things that basically get stopped from happening at the end of the day. So I think that's been a really productive year. I think Ray did a ton of work getting this off the ground as the president of the Lower Hudson Council of School Superintendents. not easy to pull everybody together, but it's one of these things that happens. The meetings happen in Ossining. They happen once, usually every month to 1 to 2 months. And they're really kind of at the edge of the issues that we're dealing with. So I just want to thank Ray for that, and just keep that on your radar for as we go into another interesting year. And certainly this coalition for the SALT deductions will be something that probably will come across Lower Hudson's desk, and they'll figure out how they want to participate in it. So I think that's it.
Thank you. Any further updates? Or?
Just some last minute items, and more so just to make some comments. First of all, Frank had shared, but I want to echo everyone that's helped to make what I think is a really successful start to the school year. It's been a choppy start because of all the days off, but you know, the kids were outstanding in the performances and the music, and our staff, our families, and our staff has set the right tone for our students and welcomed them. There were a lot of family, school picnics, which were shared before, as well as just the organization of our first few days of school and the professional development that took place in those first 2 days, which is invaluable to our work. And I want to thank everyone involved in doing so, and groups of individuals that sometimes I think we don't say thank you enough to. Our buildings and ground staff who worked tirelessly. There was we pushed the envelope literally every year in terms of work that we need to complete, all good work to make sure our spaces look great and functional for our students. So they've done an outstanding job. Our transportation department, there's always something that goes on with transportation, but nonetheless, in the end, it was very, very smooth, and we heard that from our administrators earlier this evening. And our tech department, there was a lot of work behind the scenes in technology, and everyone just wants everything to work. And they, for the most part, have made everything work. From transitioning to emails to smart boards to if Mike was here, he'd use all these technical terms that I still have difficulty with, but just there's a lot of things that he took on this year, and all of it seemed to come together. It was a bigger storm than normal in terms of the amount of work. And even with the construction, you always got to keep in mind that it's not just a physical space. There's a lot of technology associated with it. So like even Park Schools Addition, Mike and his department are very directly involved in all that. Clearly, thank you to all our colleagues here at the table for all their curriculum work that took place over the summer. And we haven't really had a chance to share that. And then I was going to say thank you to Ossining Matters. And then finally, there's a resolution that was passed, but an important one. The 3-year plan is something that's significant. I want to thank everyone that really put a lot of effort and thought into it. It's a guide for us, and I think it really is a shift from things that we've done in the past. We've always been thinking and planning, but this really kind of sets forth, a systematic approach to our work and making it manageable, meaningful, but also impactful to our students. So I want to thank everyone and thank the board for their feedback along the way and their support of the plan as well. And we'll get that out to our staff this week, actually, just to inform them that it's been approved and here it is, and put it on our website so everyone can look to it from year to year. So thank you, everyone.
Thank you. Any other further updates? No? Okay. Well, we will meet next on, it looks like October 10th is our next board meeting here at 7:30 p.m. I will take a motion to adjourn and enter into exec.
So moved.
Second.
Adjourned.